We are joined by Dinesh D'Souza, author and filmmaker. His latest film, The Dragon's Prophecy documentary, is scheduled for release on October 9th, and we wanted to talk to him about it. Dinesh, I believe today it's 700 days of war between Israel and Gaza. This ties into your film. Tell us about The Dragon's Prophecy.
Well, the film is based on the idea that October 7th is not an ordinary attack. It's a kind of a biblical event. In other words, it's an event of epical significance. And I think what the film does is it tries to raise the level of the current debate, which is a little bit stuck. On the left, you keep hearing colonialism, genocide. Of course, on the right, you have a different type of critique that is made of Israel. This film, what it does is it exposes the conflict in the light of ancient biblical battles between the Israelites and the Philistines. Now, very interestingly, the word Philistine and Palestinian are connected. They're, in fact, the same name. And one of the things we expose in the film is the way in which the tactics of the Palestinians resemble the battles of the ancient Philistines. So it's a very creepy idea that the past is now back to haunt us in a new way, but we're throwing a kind of new light on these events, looking at it somewhat through the lens of the Bible.
I was over there, Dinesh, and I know some people have had the opportunity to go visit the kibbutzes, the Nova Music Festival location. I mean, it's really unbelievable, I think, to see in person and crystallizes what exactly happened. I imagine you have some of that footage. I imagine that you also have traveled to Israel. What did you find when you have been to Israel itself as part of telling this story?
First of all, we have October 7th footage that people have literally never seen. The opening scene of the film is so shocking that we have actually had some people who get a bit squeamish about it. So there's a little bit of a graphic violence warning, because the weird thing is after October 7th, the Israeli government made the decision not to sort of release footage. Even though some of it had been live streamed by Hamas, the Israeli government said basically, we're going to bring in small groups of journalists, hoping that they're going to be fair and well-meaning. We'll show them the footage so that they can then, their eyes will be open, not realizing that these journalists from the BBC, from AP, from Sky News, very left-wing, had no interest in taking a look at any of this footage or seeing its significance at all. So we begin the film basically by putting you right there in October 7th. Then we take you to the kibbutzes, and we interview survivors, just a couple of them. But again, the stories are so haunting. They're first person. They're people who saw it with their own eyes. Because I think you can't discuss the war now without reference to, A, the events of October 7th, and second, understanding the significance of those events.
What do you think, Dinesh? Speaking to Dinesh D'Souza, I was going to build on that. You mentioned the response on the right, where some people are angry at Israel's response to Hamas. I don't think it surprises people necessarily that the left in many ways has taken the side of the Palestinians because they see them as brown. They see them as the colonized. They see Israel as the colonizer. It is a bastardized version of history that they're applying. But what do you think about the anti-Israel element of the right that now exists as well? What would you tell those individuals?
Well, first of all, I would tell them I can kind of understand where they're coming from. Where they're coming from is that, the United States has gotten involved in a lot of foreign entanglements, and it's generally worked out pretty badly, at least in the last quarter century. Iraq, of course, a lot of these same conservatives are against the Ukraine war. So they're basically saying, well, why should we be for Israel and indifferent to what's happening in Ukraine? Either we're in or we're out. The second thing that they have is this concern that somehow the Israeli tail is wagging the American dog. Now, again, on the face of it, this is a little absurd, right? You have a country of 10 or 12 million people. It's got a gross national product, a tiny fraction of the U.S. It's the size of New Jersey. It doesn't have anything like the weaponry we do. So how this little mosquito can somehow control the elephant is itself like baffling, right? It doesn't make any sense. When I debated this with Nick Fuentes a few months ago, I told him if the Jews can truly control America, maybe they are the master race. I was being sarcastic, but the point being that the issue that was raised, I think, legitimately by Tucker Carlson in his discussion with Ted Cruz is he said, are the Jews of today, like Netanyahu's Jews, the true descendants of the ancient Israelites? This is a topic that is completely settled in the movie. And we do it essentially through biblical archaeology. So we kind of take you into the archaeological digs. Part of it is if I'm giving a biblical analysis of what's going on, I want to consider the skeptical question, how do we know the Bible is even true? How do we know that the historical events described in the Bible are even valid? Was there really a King David? Was there really an Isaiah and a Jeremiah? And this is an element that is shown in the movie, and it's a very fascinating part of the puzzle.
Speaking to Dinesh D'Souza, and we're talking to him about his movie that's come out. And Dinesh, why is it that the way this issue lines up is right after the October 7th events, and I mean right after, within certainly a few days, if not hours, you had people whom you would expect on the left and in the Democrat Party saying, we need a ceasefire, which to me, and Clay and I said this repeatedly in the show right away, this would have been like saying right after the towers had come down because of the mass casualty terror attack on 9/11 in this country, we need a ceasefire with Al-Qaeda. Like, now's the time to really just hold back and have it. It seemed crazy and in the most obvious bad faith. Where does the left get this? Like, why is the left dug in on the side of Hamas and against Israel and the Jewish people in this country?
The left, in a way, accepts the premise of the radical Muslims that Israel is the little Satan and America is the great Satan. So when they start from that premise, that's their starting out premise, they consider Israel to be an illegitimate occupier of that land. Now think how crazy this is, right? The Jews have been there for 4,000 years since the days of Abraham. Sure, they went into a diaspora, but not of their own choosing. If the Jews had packed up and left, I'd understand people would say, well, you chose to leave. But they were pushed out, kicked out, burned out. So they fled, and then they returned to their native homeland. So I think that, and then if you look at the example of America, you gave the example of 9/11, but you could look at Pearl Harbor, you could look at Germany. Imagine if we were to say after Pearl Harbor, listen, there were only a few thousand Americans killed in Pearl Harbor. Why did the United States have to go to Japan and drop atomic bombs and was contemplating an invasion of Japan? How can you justify so many more Japanese civilian casualties compared to the relatively low number of civilian casualties? All of this is just like nonsense because basically Japan started it, an unprovoked attack. You know, it's almost like if you or I have a home invasion and the guy comes in and he murders your wife, he rapes your daughter, he kills your kids, he runs away, you chase him, you grab your gun and chase him. He gets into his car, but then he comes out with his own wife and kids, sticks them in front of him, and he basically goes, you can't shoot because you're going to have civilian casualties. And you'd have to say to that guy, well, listen, you are the one putting your wife and family in danger. I'm not aiming at your wife. I'm aiming at you, and deservedly so. And so you're using your own family as a human shield. So I think that in a way captures for me the kind of moral analysis to apply here. And that's why I find the kind of right-wing critique of Israel in some ways very baffling, although I try very fair-mindedly to engage it in the film.
What is the end result here? I mean, Hamas still has 700 days coming up on the 2-year anniversary. Hamas still has over 20 or 20-ish, I believe, hostages, including, unfortunately, likely dead bodies that they're holding on to. Is there hope in your mind for peace in the Middle East? Trump has now been in office for a while. There's been lots of talk about ceasefires and what some sort of resolution for this process looks like. Israel's been at war for nearly 2 years now. There's big fights inside of Israel over whether the supremely religious Orthodox Jews should be called up to fight because they have mobilized so many troops, men and women, to fight. How does this end? What should be the conclusion?
I will say that if the Bible is correct, this problem fundamentally will not be solved. And by that I mean that it will remain a festering sore. And that's really odd, right? Because the India-Pakistan issue flares up, but then it simmers down. The Northern Ireland conflict has gone away. But somehow, in all my adult lifetime, you've had American presidents marching over there with one peace plan after another, from Carter to Clinton. This stuff never gets sort of permanently fixed. Now, having said that, I think that Trump's idea, which is ultimately to fight this kind of deep, you can call it, this jihadi enmity, and replace it with sort of commercial prosperity. In other words, replace it with washing machines and small apartments, and everybody gets a job. And the idea of maybe having an administrative authority that's made up of the other Arab countries in conjunction with the United States. So in other words, you've got Egyptians and Saudis and Jordanians kind of watching over Gaza. This is a kind of ingenious idea. To my knowledge, it's never been not only tried, it's never been contemplated this way before. So I think Steve Witkoff, the envoy, may be onto something, and it's possible that we're going to see progress, but are we going to see an ultimate solution? I don't think so.
Dinesh, we appreciate the time. We encourage people to go check out the movie, and we hope you have a fantastic weekend. The film's website is thedragonsprophecy.com, and it will also have limited theater.
Thedragonsprophecyfilm.com.
Sorry, I didn't read enough of the link here. Thedragonsprophecyfilm.com. We appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Trailer also, by the way, linked at clayandbuck.com if you are curious to see that for yourself. A couple weeks ago, I went down to Chattanooga, met a lot of awesome people there in Hamilton County, in my home state of Tennessee, and I toured Legacy Box's facilities there. And I saw all of the home movies on VCR rolling in. I saw all of the 8mm film, a lot of the old pictures that are being digitized. 1.5 million families have relied on Legacy Box to help preserve their non-digitized family memories to ensure that they are preserved forever. That's what Legacy Box does. They make it possible for you to revisit, rediscover, and share with current family members and future generations your family's history. It is preserving for all time on digital files. Otherwise, media that might well disintegrate, that might well vanish before you can share it with future generations. Share your family's story and preserve it with legacybox.com/clay today for 50% off your order. That's legacybox.com/clay right now, as summer is coming to a close and we are moving into fall before the holiday rush. You get an incredible offer. legacybox.com/clay. Do it today. That's legacybox.com/clay for 50% off.